evening. This is Keisha Butts with the CTV News Update. Family and friends gather to say their final goodbyes to a bright young boy today. Mourners made their way to City of Praise Church in Landover for funeral services for 8-year-old Peyton P.J. Evans. He was tragically killed by a gunman while playing video games in his cousin's apartment last month. The rising third grader had dreams of being a professional football player.
As a child, he was a loving child, very caring, fun, always, ready to give all, all is all, into, the game of football. And that's one thing I really like about him. It's just so sad that this has to happen.
Evans was an only child. Authorities are still searching for a suspect in his shooting death. Meantime, it was 20 years ago that nearly 3,000 people were killed during the terrorist attacks at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. For many people, 9/11 is a day to honor the victims and also a day of service. Here in the county, the Bowie Senior Center held a moment of silence this morning to remember the lives lost. Holding flags and standing in a circle outside, several recalled where they were on September 11th. Marjorie Anderson says she was in New York for a funeral.
It was around 11 o'clock. I had stayed with a friend of mine, and they called me and told me what was going on. And her son came over and turned the TV on. And when I saw all of that tower downtown Manhattan in New York City being gone down, the planes, I couldn't do nothing but scream because I was afraid I was in New York and I wouldn't be able to get out of there. But thank God I was able to get out the next day.
Meantime, the city of Bowie is hosting several day of service events for 9/11. For more information, visit cityofbowie.org. As we remember the 9/11 attacks, 2 young women were in grade school that infamous day. They talk about the impact it had on their lives. Our Byron Scott has the story.
We had like a regular school day. It was...
Blair Cooper was a 5th grader at Riverdale Baptist School in 2001. That's her on the left.
I believe it was picture day. So we took pictures, our class pictures that day.
So I was excited about my outfit and wearing my outfit to school to take my picture.
Her sister Casey was in the 8th grade, also at Riverdale Baptist, and just as these pictures cemented a moment in time, so too would the events of September 11, 2001, the day terrorists struck America.
And someone ran into the gym because the picture booths were set up in the gymnasium. So someone ran into the gym and said, there's just been a bombing on the Twin Towers.
And then all of a sudden, one by one, everyone started to get these calls about leaving early from school. And I had no idea what was going on.
What Blair didn't know at that point was that the Pentagon was also hit by a plane. Inside that building was the girl's father, Aaron Cooper.
What I remember after that was being blown backwards, and I could see the fire stuff come into the room. I could see that. And the air pressure. You felt that, and it instantly, it just got hot instantly.
For the Cooper girls, it was a very long day of not knowing what was going on, and a mother trying to keep them occupied.
Eventually, my mother came to the school. I heard that my sister and I, our parents were there, or our mother was there to pick us up. When my mother got there, we didn't know what was going on. We were asking her. I was asking what was going on. My mother was not answering. She was just rushing us to the car. My sister ended up telling me that airplanes had hit a building. And I didn't know what that meant because I was in 5th grade. And I was like, what are you talking about? Their
father eventually got out word that he survived.
At the time, we only had one cell phone in our family. And he was able to make contact with my mom on that cell phone. So that gave us reassurance that he's alive. So we'll be seeing him again.
Cooper, like so many others, spent the day trying to make his way home. It would be hours before he would walk through the front door of their Upper Marlboro house.
My uncle and my grandfather brought him home. He came in the door. His clothes were ripped up. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I just saw all these black spots all over his clothes, torn.
Several emotions were going through our head. What was he thinking? What was he feeling? A sense of joy, just honestly, relief and peace.
For Casey and Blair, it was too close to home, an event where they'll always remember where they were. 20 years after 9/11, Blair would later go through another life-altering event. She works in the U.S. Capitol, and on January 6th,
I was in the Senate chamber.
Cooper, who works in the Senate recording studio, was at work.
And all of a sudden, Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence at the time, was in the building, and they swept him out. And that's when you knew something was going on. And then you can't hear what's being said, but you can hear the screaming outside of the building. And all of a sudden, officers are running around the Senate chamber. They're locking us in. It was very chaotic that day.
Back to 9/11, both Blair and Casey say their dad gets somber around the anniversary of 9/11. This year is no different, as the Coopers plan to attend a memorial service at the Pentagon.
And there's just really no words that can really describe what that day meant to my family and what it meant to me and how it has forever truly changed the way that I feel about life and people that matter most to you.
Byron Scott, CTV News.
President Biden orders sweeping vaccine mandates as the Delta variant races across the nation. Biden is requiring that all healthcare workers and federal employees, including contractors, get a COVID vaccine or face disciplinary measures. The plan also reaches into the private sector, mandating that all companies with more than 100 workers require the vaccine or weekly testing. The mandates are expected to face legal challenges. You're watching CTV News. I'm Keisha Butts. Coming up after the break, an alert to parents about a COVID case at Bowie High School. Stay with us.
The coronavirus has affected the African American community in many ways, including a drastic drop in blood donations needed for patients with sickle cell disease. If you're healthy, please make an appointment to donate at redcrossblood.org.
Welcome back. It's the third day of school in Prince George's, and officials say there's a positive COVID-19 case at Bowie High. The principal sent out a letter to parents and students yesterday. The letter says people who were in close contact with the individual have been notified. Anyone who tests positive for coronavirus will not be allowed to return to school until cleared by a primary health provider. In other news, 6 members of the Prince George's School Board sent a letter to County Executive Angela Ossobrooks requesting her immediate assistance in ensuring the school system has an adequate COVID-19 testing plan in place. The members had requested the information during a board meeting on September 2nd, but the motion was blocked by Chair Juanita Miller. Ossobrooks responded in a statement saying a plan has been put in place and will be shared with employees and families today. Meantime, Montgomery County tightens its vaccination requirements for teachers and other school staff. The state's largest school system says it's altering requirements for its 24,000 employees, fully mandating COVID-19 shots rather than allowing the option of weekly testing. About 6,000 employees have yet to inform the school system regarding their vaccination status. Another 600 have reported that they are unvaccinated. Staff members must verify at least a first dose by the end of September and a second dose by October 29th. The latest COVID-19 numbers for our area show an uptick in the numbers. Of the 1,553 newly confirmed cases, 258 of them are in Prince George's. The county's positivity rate is at 5.33%. 15 people have died of the disease since yesterday. 830 remain hospitalized. For Americans who have lived through the September 11th attacks, the images from that day are ingrained. CTV's Katara Jones is in the control room with a story about how a museum is commemorating the 20th anniversary. Katara?
As Americans pause on the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, a Smithsonian museum wants you to share your story of that tragic day.
This allows us an opportunity to gather stories from those who experienced it across the country, across the world.
The Smithsonian's National Museum of American History has launched a new web portal known as September 11th Stories of a Changed World. Curator Sharon PERICH says the digital platform would give anyone an opportunity to share their experience and reflect on that day 20 years later.
It's important that we at the National Museum of American History understand the expansive nature of what the impacts have been and what the effects have been on this country. And so we'll learn better how to do our job when we hear from the public.
Every submission will be archived and made public by the museum. Parrish, who is also a historian, says she's often cried while reading the stories that are sent in.
I'm an extremely empathetic, sympathetic person. I'm learning to read these stories with compassion, but not absorb the sadness that I often read about. So if you contribute your story, you know that there's somebody who cares who's reading your story.
Congress tasked the museum to be the official repository for collecting the history of the September 11th attacks. To share your story, visit the museum's website. Katira Jones, CTV News.
The museum will host a panel discussion called Hidden Stories, Hidden Voices, Latinx Empowerment after the attacks, tonight at 7 p.m. This event is free, however, you must register. For more information, visit AMERICANHISTORY.SI.EDU. Still ahead on CTV News tonight, the Terps get ready for Game 2 of the new season. We'll hear from Coach Mike Locksley after the break. Stay with us.
Right here, baby.
The sooner you recognize the signs of autism, the sooner you can make a lifetime of difference for your child. Start by answering a few simple questions at screenforautism.org.
Thank you for staying with us. On that fateful day 2 decades ago, emergency personnel across the region had a tough time communicating with each other. Each jurisdiction had its own emergency system, and most couldn't communicate with their neighbors. Senator CHERYL KAGAN lost a friend in the Pentagon that day. Years later, she lost another friend who was unable to get help after being struck by lightning because all the emergency lines were busy. The tragic events motivated her to create legislation for a new generation 911 system.
The interoperability, the interconnectivity across jurisdictions, across governments in times of emergency is critically important. One of the really many great advances since September 11th is that now, since last August 20th, 2020, if you can, you should always call 911. But if you can't, you can text. Now, it could be that you're hiding in a closet and there's a bad guy there. It could be that you have a disability and can't speak or can't hear. It could be that the lines are down or busy, or there's been a cyber attack. The ability to text as much information, including your location, will get you the help that you need.
Kagan's dream of a new generation 911 system finally became reality only a few weeks before the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. The Terps hit the gridiron again tomorrow night. Coach Mike Locksley and his Terps football team will host the Howard University Bison. Kickoff time at Maryland Stadium is 7:30.
This week, you know, after a big win against a border rival and now bringing in a local opponent like Howard University, the goal for us is to not play the team, but to play to the standard.
Guys in the locker room on the defense side of the ball really just made that decision that we're going to be one of those teams that's going to hit, it's going to tackle, it's going to force turnovers, that's wants to cover, stop the run, do everything. So I feel like the guys are really just taking on the challenge of being that.
Always harping on attacking the football, making sure you can give the offense extra opportunities to go score. Coach Locks, Coach Stu, all the coaches harp on just takeaways, turnovers. You know, they increase the chances of winning the game. It's just a big emphasis going into the game, always trying to make plays, always trying to, you know, take the ball away and make sure we can give the offense more opportunities to score some points.
You know, it starts with their quarterback, you know, local kid that played here at Wise that I had a chance to recruit a little bit and know a lot about. A lot of boots and nakeds where they move the pocket, the big tight end, 6'7", 240, catches the ball well, creates some matchup issues vertically against linebackers. And then the running back, like I said, is a similar skill set to what we saw last week, and it's going to be important that we get 11 hats around the ball when he has it.
And that's your CTV News Update. I'm Keisha Butts. Have a good night and a good weekend.